Los Angeles, there is a legend, a TV writer for many shows. He did many works from Saturday Night Live. He's an Emmy Awards winner and also a creator for story of legendary shows like Masters of the Universe and TMNT Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And tonight I have the honor and the pleasure to have back on my show the one and the only Rowby Goren. Welcome back to the show, Rowby.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Adam, and we've been working on this, I think, since May to get me available because I've been kind of busy, believe it or not, after all these years. But so I'm happy we finally got this working, and the sound is working, the picture's working. So thank you for inviting me.
And thank you to come back. So I want to start immediately. We talked about that earlier before to start together the show. Tell me something. How start your career? The beginning.
Well, first of all, I was always a funny kid in school. I mean, I was the funny guy, and I like comedy. Comedy was always my background. So I was wanted to become a writer, and I was working at the divorce court as a typist clerk. I mean, a very low position. I was really, and then a show called Laugh-In came on TV, and I was really excited by it. In fact, it was a huge hit, as it turned out. So I said, how can I get on this show? I don't know anybody connected to the show. So I would take the bus to work. I had a yellow tablet, and I would just write one joke after another, just good ones, bad ones. I did not censor myself. And anybody that's doing writing, I always recommend the first draft. Don't censor yourself. Do anything, but just do it. So I wrote. I still have that notebook. It was hundreds of jokes. And then somebody told me, well, the next step would be to send in pick your 10 best jokes that you think are the 10 best, put them on 3x5 cards and send them in. Now, at the time, I was very naive. I thought that's the way you do it. So I did. I found my 10 best jokes and I sent them in. One of them was Lenin's grave is a communist plot. Short as that was. So Laugh-In was a show of a lot of jokes, very jokey show. Nothing was very long. Boing, 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 boing. So I sent them in on Monday, I guess, Monday or Tuesday. And the next day I get a phone call from the producer of the show. Here I am in the divorce court and marriage counseling office. And I pick up the phone and he says, hello, this is George Slaughter. I'm looking for, who is this? I said, Rowby Goren. At that time I was using a different name. And, but I knew I couldn't talk to him because on the other side of the counter were all these marriages that were breaking up. I couldn't talk about. And so I put him on hold. I went to another office. He thought that was hysterical that he was the biggest producer of comedy on television. I put him on hold. He thought I was trying to be funny. I was just very naive. So I got on the phone and I talked to him and he said, can we meet? I said, sure. I told him what bus I was going to take. He thought that was fun. He thought I was that I would be taking a bus to meet him, not knowing that's the only transportation I had. In fact, later on, he would tell people about me. He says, I was so young that my mother had to drive me to work every day. Of course, it wasn't true. So anyway, so I get on Laugh-In, and it was a huge show. Saturday Night Live emerged from that show. One of our writers was Lorne Michaels, and he is still, 50 years later, the producer of Saturday Night Live. In fact, he asked me once, me and my partner, do you want to come to New York? I'm starting a new show, live comedy, every Saturday night. And we said, well, not really. We're okay here. We didn't think that show had a chance. So it just shows you never really know. So I did all these live action shows, very glamorous background, being a television writer, huge sitcoms. I wrote sitcoms, variety shows, game shows. I won an Emmy and all of that. And then I get a call from, this goes on for several years, maybe decades, I don't remember, maybe 15 years. I get a call from my agent saying, they're looking for writers for Fat Albert. Would you be interested in
Cool.
meeting with them? Comedy writers. And I said, not really, because I don't even know much about Fat Albert other than they have these crazy slang words, and I really don't know it. And I don't know anything about cartoons. I wouldn't know how to write one. I said, well, meet with them anyway. So I did. I met with Arthur Nadell, who's at Filmation, charged of all the writers, and he hired me. Why not? Because I was a big comedy writer. I wrote one episode, but and I again a lot when you're writing live action, the director does all of the camera shots. If you're on writing for a sitcom, for example, and you start putting in camera shots, you would get hell from the directors. Don't you touch that? That's my show. So I wasn't used to that, but I ended up really liking calling the camera shot. So you call wide shot, close up. It was part of the storytelling. It isn't just a technical part. You do things with it, either shortcuts or angles to do certain things. So so I get on Fat Albert and I write one, and then they want to put me on staff, not just a freelancer. So I got on staff and I wrote more Fat Alberts than anybody else. I wrote 13, including the final Fat Albert cartoon. While I'm doing that, on the wall are these pictures of this muscular guy, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't have time. We had to write basically one script a week, and I keep seeing these pictures of this muscle man and all these other weird characters. I paid really no attention to it. So when Fat Albert finished, I said, "Well, thanks a lot. You know, this was more interesting." The other interesting thing about Filmation was it was a great place to learn about cartoons because they did everything in that building. Wasn't much of a building. I used to joke this looks like a whorehouse, but inside were very creative people. There were the writers. So the writing was done there. The storyboards, and of course the animation, and ink and page was there. It even had a camera, a rostrum camera that shot the cells. It was all done by hand. Ink and paint was the biggest part of the whole place because they were painting all this stuff. And so I learned a lot. I would really hang out. I'd go upstairs to the storyboard department where they had some really talented people doing that, taking the scripts. They liked my scripts because I called the camera shots. I knew what I was doing. Most of the other writers many of the other writers were brand new to doing this kind of stuff. But I already caught on real fast, including the camera shots. I loved doing that. It was really part of the way I did everything. Most of the other writers were sort of serious. They really weren't comedy writers. When we were finished typing up our scripts, because we had typewriters in those days, we would give it to the two assistants to the Arthur and Adele, and then these two women would type it up into the Radio Shack computer with floppy disks this big. I always knew they were doing one of my scripts because they'd be laughing as they worked on it. Where the other ones, they really weren't that funny. They were some of them were, but none of them took my approach of comedy. That's why they wanted me there. So I write the last episode of Fat Albert, and I said, "Well, this was very interesting. I had a good time here. Now goodbye." He says, "No, no, 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 no. We want you to stay here because we want you to write He-Man." I said, "He-Man?" I mean, I knew nothing about it. And then I realized what all these pictures on the walls was this He-Man guy.
This guy that you
And
have in my background too.
yes, and I said, "What kind of a place is this?" So so I they give me a box. We want you to do it. I said, "I don't know anything about it. They want me to start next week and have a script finished by Friday." And they give me a Bible, a script Bible, which is what the show's all about, about 2 inches thick, and a bunch of old scripts. And this is the second season I would start on. And I said, "I don't know anything about He-Man. So my goal, so what I did, I don't know whether you've ever heard of Fat Albert. Did you ever watch Fat Albert? And
Yes, a little bit,
so
a little bit.
I didn't have time. Yeah, well, I didn't have time to figure out the characters. I didn't have time. I had to write it. Monday, I had to come up with the premise. So I made He-Man was Fat Albert with muscles, and Man at Arms was somebody else. Orko was Mushmouth, and I just changed. I didn't have. I really that's all I could do. Finally, I kind of caught up what it was about. But the first script I wrote, I really was. I didn't know what I was doing. So that was my first script, and then I wrote two more. I wrote a total of three before I was hired away by CBS to write a show more suited for me, which was Berenstain Bears, and so. But the interesting thing about He-Man was it was such a hugely popular show that other cartoon companies wanted any He-Man writer they could get. So me, who was a comedy writer, writing silly stuff, Berenstain Bears, Mario, and all, I would always get these shows that are kind of unsuited for me, but I was getting pretty good at it, so it kept me going in animation. While live action was very glamorous, we got very good residuals in animation, except for France. We didn't get residuals, but I got pretty good pay because the networks liked me, particularly CBS. So, but no residuals. But what the good thing about animation for me was it was like writing pulp fiction. Are you familiar with that stuff? Well, I guess in the 1940s, these writers just grind out one script after another. And I was writing out one cartoon script after another because I was just so busy. And the interesting thing was, I was going to say? Um, uh, there was a point I'm trying to make here. I'll come back to it, but it was. Oh, and the other thing. So when I was writing live action, the problem with live action, which I enjoyed, but you would write a script, but an actor or an actress would then portray it on camera, and they always had notes. They wanted this change, that change, because after all, they were the ones facing the camera, not me, in a corner of an office. So they would always want changes. In those days, if you were a good a good cartoon writer, what you wrote got on the screen. There was hardly any changes to the scripts I made. Maybe storyboard would have to do something, but I knew how to write it. I got very good with camera direction, and whatever I wrote, I knew I couldn't say, well, they'll fix it somewhere. I knew what I wrote was going to be on the air, and when I would see it, so that was very good. So I enjoyed writing, you might say, pulp fiction, writing one script after another. I would be when I was working for Deke Entertainment. I was working on some similar show, and I remember I, oh, by the way, I would usually, if the script was due tomorrow, I'd start writing it last night. I'm sorry, but that's just the way I worked. And they knew that about me. So I would always say, I need 5 more, or I need 4. When I was working at Filmation, I worked in the office, so I couldn't get away with that. But when I was let alone to work in other studios, I would call and say, I just need 4 more days, please. And then I worked like crazy to get it finished. And I was working on one script for Deke. I remember they needed it Deke did all their animation overseas. It was China or whatever it was. And I was literally, the two story editors were leaning over me as I was writing, the final few pages of it, because they had to get it to China, or maybe it was whatever it was, uh, or we would lose our slot in their schedule, and we wouldn't make an air date. So they were literally hanging over me as I was writing it up and sending it over to China. It was India or some other place, someplace over there. So it was very interesting, needless to say. And so I read every kind of script you can imagine, not just comedy, but I wrote a Rambo script, which I never should have written. One of the story editors, they used me on another for Rambo. I said, please, if I was no good for Fat Albert and wasn't so sure about Fat Albert, I know I can't write Rambo. This guy who was a story editor had all kinds of guns in his house. He was a gun guy. And I said, I don't even know what gun to use. He says, well, look, here's what I'll do. I'll give you, when you get your outline, then I'll tell you, use this kind of a gun, a rifle for this or this for that. I said, all right, all right. You know. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I wrote this Rambo, about 3 episodes of that. And occasionally I would put the wrong gun in, but he would fix it before it went out. He was really into guns. And so it was crazy, no doubt about it. And so I wrote other kinds of cartoons. In my if you go to the Internet Movie Database, I have my notes here. Berenstain Bears, Tiny Toon Adventures, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Have you ever heard of that cartoon? Yeah.
Yes.
The Busy World of Richard Scarry, The Adventures of Paddington Bear. I don't even remember writing that, but that's what it says I wrote. There are some shows I don't even remember what I wrote, but they
I
have me
saw also
listed.
on the web that you, if it is accurate, that you work also in the Teen Wolf cartoon.
Yeah, Teen Wolf.
Yes, you
Yeah.
work also on that.
So I wrote that. Now that was uh, another one I wrote. That was for CBS. In fact, for Teen Wolf, it was very interesting. I was working on it with another production company, and I get a call from them. The same company that did Berenstain Bears. Is we just got a call from CBS. We have 5 days. The CBS, Judy Price did not like 4 or 5 scripts, and we have like 5 days to read for you to do a new script, and if she likes it, it'll be on the schedule. If it can't be 6 days, it's got because they got to get it to the advertisers and all that. So it was Teen Wolf, and I guess I saw maybe they gave me the movie to look at real quick, so I had to start with nothing, and in 5 days I delivered Teen Wolf, and my script got that show, that cartoon on the air, and I like to think because the cartoon got on the air, it probably helped keep the franchise alive, and and that's why you see a Teen Wolf movie now and then. Well, it's been a while since there was that. So I wrote Teen Wolf 2 in 5 days, or they would have lost the opportunity to have that show on CBS. So I was, I was the woman in charge of cartoons at CBS, Judy Price, was a very tough cookie, and she was. You got to most writers, if they got a call from Judy Price to come and meet her, they would be terrified. But I got along with her just great. I would joke with her. I'd be like her court jester. I would say these silly jokes. What do you know? I would really have a good time with her, and she liked me. And I did a lot of stuff for CBS because of that.
So your comedy talents help you also in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, usually when these days I do Shopify sites because I'll tell you about my computer background in a little bit. Uh, I usually start out serious, people who don't know me. I don't jump into the jokes, but eventually it all starts to happen. Then I start, being a smart aleck and basically insulting, the woman who hires me, which you got a kick out of me, Judy. But most people were horrified if they got a call to come in to see Judy Price because but we got along really well. So yes, my comedy, my being a kid in school who was a misfit in some ways, who was a class clown to some people, not to everybody, uh, uh, made me get along really great with people. In fact, when I do my Shopify sites, many times the decision makers who decide who's going to get this, who's going to build this site for them. If I say I wrote on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or He-Man, that seals the job because they were kids and they watch my shows. And to get a little bit more seriously now, when I would go to these He-Man conventions, uh, uh, it was amazing. I did it to make money. I mean, I like doing it, and Filmation was a great place to work at, as was when I did Ninja Turtles. But I had no idea of the importance the show was to kids. There were kids. I was sitting next to the guy that created Orko, Robbie London, and we'd be sitting there, and all of a sudden we'd say, "Oh, here comes another one," and there would be some adult who would come to us with already, you could tell they were damaged goods or they were kids, and they would say, if it wasn't for He-Man and you, and they name my script sometimes, my specific episode, I don't know whether I would have made it through school. I mean, they had tears in their eyes. I mean, there were more than one who said they were to commit suicide. So He-Man was their only friend, or in the case of Ninja Turtles, it was this He-Man convention, and one was combined with Turtles. So it was really kind of surprising to us and shocking and humbling that what we did, what is it, 30 years ago, 35, would still be around. And there was a father that
It's
brought his two
40,
kids.
man. I believe it's 40 years old.
Really?
The
He's
beginning is
almost my
40 years old
age.
because the 40th anniversary this year for man. Because in
This show
1982,
is,
I believe so.
huh?
So I believe 40 years because the 40 anniversary, they do some special figures. I see, sorry, 1 minute, I see some question in the chat. Guys, in the last minutes,
Okay.
10 minutes, Robbie will answer you. So you continues to guys to put your question in the chat, and later on in the show, in the last 10
Yes.
minutes,
Uh,
Robbie will answer all questions. So continue to put
yes.
the question. But
I'll
now
stop
back
yakking when the
back
question
on
time comes.
yes,
Yes. You can
the
ask me anything.
okay, yes. I have a
And
question because I saw on the web that you had some nomination for the Emmy Awards, and you was also a winner, one of
yes,
them. Tell me
yes.
something about this experience.
I was nominated for Little Lulu cartoon. Was it that one? Uh, but I won an Emmy for a very popular game show called Hollywood Squares, a very popular here. And I don't know where your people are from, but Hollywood Squares, and I won an Emmy for that. So the good news is I won an Emmy. The bad news, it was for Hollywood Squares because it was a game show. So it wasn't I wasn't. It was very popular, but I didn't enjoy. I would write gags for the people on the show that were the celebrities, and we had a whole team of writers that did that, so that when they had ad libs, they would be funny. So I wrote game shows, variety shows. I wrote a ride for Epcot before it was built. It was for a General Electric pavilion. My version never made it because Disney does lots of rewrites, but I worked for them. It was very fascinating. They were still working on a version of I went to their facility, and Disney Studios they had a sound stage, and they had miniature of the rides. You would go in and you would be in a little cart, and you would go through and look at all what they were doing in this little cart. It was fascinating. And then then they had a special place where they built all the rides in nearby, and they were working on getting Abraham Lincoln, who was talking in those days at Disneyland, to walk upstairs. They were showing me how they were trying to make that work. It was a fascinating place. So I wrote all kinds of things. I wrote Universal Studios for a dog show. What was the name of that popular? It was a dog cart show, and I was writing for dogs that weren't even born yet because they had to build the ride to make it work. What was the name of that popular series of films? Anyway, so I did all kinds of stuff. A lot of the writers who started out on Laugh-In, that show I did, or some of them, they could only do that kind of writing. It was called variety show comedy, although you still see it in Saturday Night Live to a certain extent. But I ended up writing all kinds of stuff, ending up in cartoons. And people would say, well, so now you build websites? I mean, it doesn't sound very exciting compared to show business. Why don't you keep doing that? Well, when I was writing sitcoms, uh, I was very busy doing those. Uh, you would have a live audience. You had to make sure there was a joke on every single page, and it was a lot of work. I had fun. I worked with some, it was fun to be on the sitcom, in the studio, and you're doing all this stuff. And one of the shows I worked on, was produced by the I Love Lucy writers. Have you heard of that where you are? I Love
Yes,
Lucy.
a little bit,
So
a
it was
little bit.
fun. It was fun to work with them, and I to talk about the Lucy days and all of that. So it was a lot of work to write comedy, but I was always interested in computers. Even in the Laugh-In days, I remember in the beginning of my career, they were talking about computer things, you know, and eventually, when the cartoons happened, there were more computers, and I started teaching some very famous film writers and regular writers how to use their computer, including uh, Sherwood Schwartz, who created the Brady Bunch and uh, Gilligan's Island, uh, um, and Stanley Donen, who was the director and co-producers of Singing in the Rain and all those wonderful Gene Kelly films. So I taught him how to use a computer. Oh, you have to go to bed soon. Someone has to go to bed soon. They have a
Yes, so
question.
maybe we can answer his question because he goes to bed. So
Yeah, he's going to bed. So I think you should go to bed right away. Is that your question? Oh no, you have another question. So what is his question or her question or their question?
can you hear me? Because for a few times I was frozen. Maybe
I hear you
one of the
fine.
two. Maybe is my myself is frozen.
For a second, I
The
think you were
connection.
frozen,
I don't know now
but you're
because
okay now.
I see you in the other monitor
I see you.
that you talk, but I see you frozen now. So I need to check if I'm frozen or if you are frozen.
No, I'm not frozen and you're not frozen. Can you
Okay,
hear me talk?
because in another monitor I see you, but
Oh, okay. So he's coming back, everybody. He's going to probably reset his thingamajig. Oh, here I am. So we'll get to your question as soon as he comes back. Uh, what else can I talk about? So I was always interested in computers, and then somebody wanted me to build a website for them. In those days, it was pretty difficult, but somehow I was interested, and I figured it out. So I built a website, and I built more and more and more. I built some websites for UCLA here in Westwood, Los Angeles, and uh, so I started doing more computer work. And I remember I said to my agent, you know, I've enjoyed doing cartoons and all of that, but I really don't want to do anymore. So if you get anybody that wants me, just say he doesn't do that anymore. But I got one more call from Deke Entertainment, which was I did a lot of work for them. You probably see their slogan at the end of a lot of shows, DIC. And they wanted me to work on another show, and I said I really don't want to do this. But everybody who was good, so they wanted me to at least go to the meeting and meet with everybody, and I knew them all. So I said, okay, I'll go to the meeting, you know, because they were friends, you know, if only to say thanks, but I'm not going to do it. So I remember when I got into that meeting, I said, I knew them all. They liked me. They were happy to see me there. I said, why am I here? I really have done it with cartoons. I don't want to do them anymore. I want to do other things. And my internet business was starting to build up, and I was making my clients laugh instead of a bunch of millions of other people. So I just sort of I sat through the meeting. I did write one script for them, and I said, no, I really mean it. No more. Um, I hope I know you're there. I hope you're seeing me. Um, I wonder if I should go and look at the at my internet thing here. In case hi, I am still on camera. I think I'm talking to everybody. I think I am talking to everybody. If you need to reset the thing, let me know. But I think they're hearing me, but I don't know. I, I, I still see like and subscribe, so I'm assuming I am alive. But I don't know. Let's see if he gets back to me, and if Alan gets back to me, and Oh, okay. He's still working on it. Okay. Uh, uh, let let me know. No. Uh, oh, he'll be back in a few seconds. All right. So when he comes back, you'll let Alan know whether you've heard all my yabbering about my transition from cartoons to, in this case, Shopify, the Shopify platform. And so now I'm making my clients laugh, and they're not always used to it. They may be selling shoes or oh, here he comes. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can see you.
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
because the connection.
All right.
I'm lucky that I have another device to watch the show. I was able to.
Oh,
I have added
let
two
me turn out
devices
I'm
to.
turning out the other device. Oh, I see. I'm
So
turning it
because
on.
of that, I was able
Okay.
to. Thanks God that the connection is still working during the part of you alone, because without that
Because
could
I
be a
had the other
big
thing
problem.
going.
It's not
Well,
the
I
first
turned
time.
off.
Yes.
So, can you
So
see if
sorry for
anybody?
that.
Should we answer
Yes,
that
everything
question before he
working with
goes to
you. The
sleep?
only problem was the only process that me disappeared during the show because the connection right here. But you still
Oh,
in the
I
show.
see. Oh,
So
because I
because
lost the connection. Because
yes,
you're
but
the moderator.
exactly. So because of that, the show will continue. It's not the first time that happens something like similar. If the guy that watching my show knows that I have some problem, similar problem during my last interview with the J. Joe Hasbro team, because of a storm like that. Sometimes the connection goes
Yeah.
down. However, we are back on track and we're still alive to continue this amazing episode with you. And so I want to stay a little bit more about the Emmy Awards winning. What is your feelings now? Because I think is still
Yes.
a big things for an artist, not
Oh, it
like something
is.
like that.
Well, you know, it's an honor. I know writers who are better than I am who do not have an Emmy. It's I feel bad in some ways because it's a roll of the dice. Uh, Hollywood Squares in those days was a very popular show, and it was sort of like, I was very lucky. I got on Laugh-In. I got on some big situation comedies and other shows, variety shows. Then He-Man, again, shot off my cartoon career in a way I never expected. I started with Fat Albert, but He-Man was such a huge success, it made it happen. So, but nobody really knows what makes a show a success. I like to think that a show, the most important thing on camera is the performers or actors, because that's who faces the camera. If you don't like the people that's on a show, or even in a movie, or in your case, even a book, you may not want to uh, look at it again. I'm not saying they got to be nice. They could be criminals. Look at Skeletor. You know, he's a lot of it was a lot of fun to write for. Quite frankly, a lot more fun than He-Man, who he was in my case he was Fat Albert with muscles. So villains are always fun to look for. So casting is so important. So in the case of Hollywood Squares, where I got my Emmy, uh, there were a lot of very popular performers on that show, including there was a guy it was like a tic-tac-toe board, and in the middle was a guy named Paul Lynn, and we wrote all of his jokes for him, though the audience never knew it. But he was very liked. So I always tell an independent producer, if they want to get their movies made, or a cartoon, I'm not saying you got to make the people likable, but they should be enjoyable, and that's the key to the whole thing. When you look at a situation comedy, the people are always very interesting, and they're not annoying. They're not. It's a mixture of things. So getting an Emmy was kind of a role. In that case, there was no other show that could compete with Hollywood Squares. It was just hugely popular, and it was for the game show category. So you could, and that was it. There was no better game show out there. So, and the writers were got an Emmy. So I got my Emmy. I got an Emmy for that, and it and it helped me get other work. I it wasn't the kind of comedy writer that I particularly liked doing. We would get celebrities on that show, usually booked at the very last minute, so they had to be written, very quickly, and they had to be really good jokes. So we had a bunch of writers, and so it was. So that was the good news. The good news, I got an Emmy. The bad news was for Hollywood Squares. Even though it was a very popular show, it wasn't popular for me to work on. So then I got back into I did other game shows too because of Hollywood Squares. So the Emmy itself, I don't think did much for me, except I don't know. I had a friend that should say you should always say you're an Emmy winner. He always introduced me as his Emmy-winning friend when he was trying to sell something. He would bring me in as a partner. He's my Emmy winner. I said, don't say that. He said, well, you should. You should be quite proud of winning an Emmy. So I mention it more now, particularly if I don't mention that it was for Hollywood Squares. They think maybe it was for Laugh-In, which won, I think, 10 Emmys before it was on the show. So it's a big deal to win an Emmy. I mean,
Super cool deal, I think. There is I answered this guy. We are live, and it's not a
I
loop.
think this video is on a loop.
No. It's live right now. So put the question,
okay, we're not on a loop.
because later he answered your question. The last 10 minutes of the show, Rowby
I see.
will answer all questions in the chat. So guys, continue to put the question because the show is live right now. So only to
it's live.
clarify that.
Yes, good. Because some people are coming back, I think, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So tell me more about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle experience. How started that show with you?
Which again? The experience with what?
For the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Tell me something about this experience.
I wrote so many shows. Okay, that show. Okay, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a very interesting show. I get a call from Jack Mendelson, who was in charge of that show, and he says, we're looking for writers for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I said, what? I never heard of it. I thought he was joking. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I never heard of the comic book. I never heard of the history. And I said, okay, and he sent me some scripts, and he was very tough to get a storyline through. He was very protective of that property. He knew what he wanted. He was a long-time comedy writer, and he really was good at it. He went way back. And so I had to go in with several meetings before he bought one for me. Then after I wrote one, he bought the second story idea for me. But it was tough getting things by him, which was good because the show was a huge success. So the first one I wrote was, I like these old movies. One of them was called The Attack of the Giant, I think 30-Foot Woman or something or other. And I thought, well, that'll be kind of interesting because Irma was one of the cast members. And I went in there and I said, what about, the attack of the 50-foot Irma? And he liked it right away. So, but I had other good ideas, but this was really, he could not turn that down, So, so I wrote it. I did the usual 2 drafts, and pretty much what you see is what I wrote again. But I would say that was perhaps one of the slightly more rewritten scripts that I wrote, because he was very particular about it. I would say about 80% of that was what I wrote, Irma. Again, I was a freelancer, so he had other writers also writing the other ones. He-Man was very much a staff-written show. New people would be added to the staff, but most cartoons in those days did not have a staff. they were freelancers. So I wrote that one, and then I came in. He liked it. It turned out really good. So he gave me a second one, and that was I came in with the idea of the Turtle Maniac, the guy that is such a fan of the turtles that there's only one more. He has a whole museum, and there's only one more thing he doesn't have, and that's the turtles themselves. Uh, good, good. Thank you, love ladies too. Uh, so I only wrote two of those because I was going from one show to another. I just had like a list of things, and I never got back to doing more of those. So, but it's so funny because I never thought that Ninja Turtles or He-Man would still be have fans, all these decades later. It was totally unexpected. I mean, I would say that all the people that, as far as filmation went with He-Man, we're all quite startled that it's still so popular. And as you know, in both cases, new films are being made for them. So, so I had fun with those turtle scripts because of the nature of them, the collector and the giant Irma. It was just a lot of fun. I think I saw the uh, the artwork for the giant woman, but I never actually saw the movie. At least I didn't. I liked the idea of it, so I finally went and looked at the film so I could sort of see what I liked so much about it, and that became the uh, the uh, the giant Irma
I think
cartoon.
also that the TNT, the Turtles show, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show, was more comedy than He-Man, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, definitely. So that was more for me. But once again, I wasn't quite sure what the show was about. I mean, I did have more time to learn about it than I did with He-Man. So it wasn't like I made the turtles. One turtle would be my version of Tila and all that. I was able to get their characters correct right from the beginning, which wasn't the case of He-Man. I just didn't know when I saw the names of the characters. Man at Arms. What is that? None of it made sense to me at all. I didn't know where they would even choose such names, except the toys had those names, and of course the toys came first. So it was very strange. And then this thick Bible, but so but again, when I went to this convention with the turtle lovers, and it's just quite amazing how the fans are for that show to this day.
Speaking of your career, I saw also that you worked also in the Beast Wars Transformers. That's correct?
The what? Oh, Beast War. So
Beast
one of
Wars.
Larry DiTilio, who was a wonderful He-Man. See, He-Man was really his cup of tea. He really loved that show. He wrote some very important episodes, including She. As I understand, he wrote the She-Ra pilot. He was really into that show. So what were we talking about? So he became the story editor of Beast Wars, and that was a very early CGI show, and and because it was so, they did it up in Canada, the animation there, and because it was so expensive to animate these characters in those days, particularly, they only had those main characters. And I thought, well, why don't we just duplicate one of them, double Dinobot, and they don't have to design another character. So they like that. That was an automatic sale. So I wrote that. But if you look at it, it was very early CGI. They were, it was almost like a test to see if it would even work. But the show got on the air. So that was as close as I got to writing. It was based on, what was the series? Beast Wars was based on, what was that show? I mean, it was a spinoff of another very popular show by Sunbow. I think they were the producers of that other one. So So I wrote about 3 of those. The funny thing was with that show, it's very funny when you don't write animation. You can have people that say some really weird things, like um, in the case of Beast Wars, someone complained that he wrote jokes that other people were on other episodes of Beast Wars, and they had the same similar thing, I think, with whatchamacallit, look what I wrote here, of Mario Brothers. Someone said, well, he just copied jokes from the other show. They didn't know that the show were not produced in that order that they aired. So the other writers were the ones who were copying me on those particular instances. But in the case of He-Man, uh, there was a He-Man website, and people were, was it He-Man? Yeah, and one of the people on there said that one of the worst writers of all, of course, is Rowby Goren. He wrote the Greatest Show on Eternia, which was probably the worst episode ever, and taking having Skeletor shot out of a cannon, that's just it just was terrible. I became very good friends with that particular writer and with that review person. So I went on the forum and I said, look, I was hired because I was a comedy writer. I was told they wanted to have a circus. And I said I had my original version of this circus show was very dark. I had a ringmaster in it that was so dark in my original premise that Arthur Nadell said, this sounds like he's the real devil. If anything, I will never get this on the air. So he said, make it silly and all of that. So that's how I got Crackers the clown on that show. And I knew the story editors were also not too thrilled with me. I mean, that's the storyboard artists were really not too thrilled with me because it was so foreign from the rest of the series. So I said, if there was an alternative world, this could be, and I took over He-Man, and I became the story editor. I could have turned it into a funniest comedy show ever. Maybe that would have been better, So nobody knows how things are going to be. Alternative universe, that's what I was trying to say. So what was I talking about? Who are you? Oh yeah, you're the guy with the long hair. Yeah.
Yes, long hair, top hat.
Yeah,
When
at
saying
least you
that.
have hair. I don't.
Yes.
Well, unless that's a fake hair, like my fake. The
No,
go
a
ahead.
real. That's a real.
Yes.
Speaking of comedian, I want to talk about a little bit about that because you mentioned before Saturday Night Live, and many of
Yes.
my favorite comedian actor was born on that show. I'm talking about Dan Aykroyd, Belushi, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase.
Yes.
These actors are still today my favorite comedian. Do you ever meet one of them, and what do you think about them in general?
Well, that was why that show became such a hit. Like I'm saying, the jokes were good. I'm sure they were. But when you have Gilda Radner, they did the show in New York, and I don't think I met any of them, but I'm almost sure I didn't. But that shows why that show was a hit. If they had jokes 20 times better, uh, it wouldn't have made a difference. It's that cast. Lorne Michaels, who cast the show, a lot of it from he has a Canadian background, out of Canada and from Second City and things like that, comedy groups. Whether it was by luck or by he knew what he was doing, that cast made that show. Because as you probably know, there was a period of Saturday Night Live where it sort of was not as good because they didn't have the same cast. You never really know. You just uh, but a good cast is so important. In the case of He-Man, I don't know what. Obviously, that cast appealed to people, and certainly the kids who came home from school every day and considered He-Man and the other players their friend. And in the case of Ninja Turtles, they were just a lot of fun. And again, they were on 5 days a week too, weren't they? And so it was. Uh, it's the performers on camera that are most important. In fact, when you're at a He-Man convention, at least when I would go to them, they would pay more attention to the voice actors who would come in and spend, an hour at a table recording their lines after we spend a week or two writing and rewriting the script. And our table was hardly anybody would show up there. But those who did understood the importance of writers. So
Cool.
those that did like us were very happy to meet us.
Now it's time to take a look of the question by the fan in the chat.
Oh, good. You have some more?
Yes, this one.
Oh.
One thing I noticed about 80s tunes, no matter who could the main villain was, the writer often gave the better script to the secondary or rarely seen villains. Did you notice that at all, Alan and Rowby?
Well, again, it's always more fun to write for the villain, and I think in almost every case. So they were more fun to write. In my case, well, if you want to call Irma became a villain, I always look for the villains to have fun with. So they don't do that anymore. Everybody's a villain. I don't know what. How that's in the 80s. Yeah, villains were important and a lot of fun to write for. So as far as secondary villains, well, sometimes in the case of did a live action show for a company called Puff and Stuff, and the villain had sidekicks, and so did Skeletor. So it was always more fun to write for them. Then we got to go back to the boring main cast and make He-Man say something, in my case, funny, which didn't always fit his personality. I had fun with Orko, though. I like Orko. I had no idea what Manny Faces was all about, or Man at Arms. I just figured he was somebody. The King and Queen were probably the worst of all because they just sort of stood there. So it was just more fun to write for the villains and build them up, and then have to go back to the. I'll tell you one part I like the most about writing He-Man, the transformation scene, because all I had to do was take a copy of one and there was 3 minutes done. I didn't have to write. So if I was bored, I said, "Oh, I'm going to have to put the transformation scene a little bit earlier than I have the power scene." So villains are always more fun to write for.
Also more colorful, in my opinion. More
colorful. Yeah, and I think the newer versions of Skeletor, I've seen some pictures of him. He's really scary. I can't shoot him through a cannon anymore. In a circus show, he's pretty. What I'm seeing some teases. It's just amazing how the show.
Did you see the show on Netflix, the new one?
No, I guess I should. So is it already on Netflix?
Yes, was last year was on. But you can find you can find on Netflix, however, still on Netflix.
I'll go back and look at it again.
Yes,
but I should. Apparently, the second He-Man show was not particularly good, if you remember the second version of it.
You mean the 2002 version? You mean?
I think it was an earlier than that. It was a few years after the Filmation version. It wasn't particularly good. They didn't ask any of us to write it. It was kind of funny. And they didn't ask me to write the He-Man movie. They should have. I could have made it really funny.
You mean the 1987 movie?
Was that what it was? Yeah. So
I did. Speaking of that movie, I did an interview I have 2 times in my show. William Stout. There was the guy that designed everything in the movie. Was an artist that created that. He told me many interesting, funny stories also for that. But speaking of, there is another question for you. Did you work?
Sure. Can I ask a question about your time? Well, I did write. I think between I wrote one Ghostbusters for them, but I was really segueing to Berenstain Bears at CBS. When they found out, when I wrote a script for them, they really wanted me to be the story editor. The Berenstains came out to California to meet me. They were so happy that they finally got a writer that wasn't ruining their books. So I wrote one Ghostbuster. That was a real Ghostbuster.
No, what's Ghostbusters? Because the filmation Ghostbusters was the series with the gorilla.
Yeah. So I wrote one of
Was
those
really
real
comedy,
fast.
by the way. Was a
Yeah,
really
but I
comedy
wrote it
show,
real
more
fast
than
because I
the
had to
others.
get out of there. And I don't even know when I
Okay.
had time to write it, but I needed one, and I wrote that once. I don't have anything to say about it because didn't. I didn't. I had to write it very quickly. That's all I remember. So is there
Another
another
one,
question?
yes.
Well, the one I liked. Well, there were two villains I liked as far as cartoons went, and that was Skeletor, of course, and then um, another live action show was called Land of the Lost, and we had a live action actor who played the villain, um, and he was a lot of fun to work for. He's whenever he was in the scene, he overplayed everything. He looked for where the light was on him, and he made sure he was in the light. And he was a very interesting guy. So I like writing. It was Land of the Lost, and I forgot the name of the actor, but he was a very interesting guy, and he just really overplayed he was even broader than Skeletor. So I like writing for him. The other shows didn't really have a lot of villains. I'm trying to think. Uh, so Skeletor wins out, and the Land of the Lost. Doctor, whatever, Doctor, forgot what his name was. He was a real crazy guy. And he had a midget as a partner, and he was great to work with too. Billy Barty. So it was. Um, Villains were just fun, but
There is
Skeletor was
a
just
Skeletor is
when you
super
write
cool. I
for a
have also
villain.
Skeletor on
Yes,
myself.
yes. The rule is in a normal movie, if you're writing for a villain, um, uh, villains do not think they're villains. If you're really writing a serious film, villains think they're on the right. Just like Mr. T, a former president, I'm sure he thinks he's on the right, and someone on the left thinks they're right too. But villains are, in theory, are best done when the villain believes that they're not bad. But cartoons are different. You play them over the top for some reason. At least when I was writing them.
There is another question related with Ghostbusters. He says, "My question: Why working on Ghostbusters did you
No,
talk with?"
no, because again, I wrote that real fast, and I was off to Berenstain Bears land, which was a totally different world. When I left Filmation, they were starting to talk about um, uh, uh, the what's her it's been so the what the woman tells Tila wait Shira they were just starting to get that going, and I was just I would have liked to write some of those, but I had to leave and get Berenstain Bears back on its feet because they were threatening to pull that show from CBS till they saw my script. So I was a hero for them. So I just don't know anything more about Ghostbusters.
I saw some. There is a comment about the circus episode of a man.
Yeah, so again, it was as far as the original version, where it was this spooky, uh, a very dark version of it. Probably somewhere in their warehouse they have that old presentation. We would write about a 3 or 4 page presentation what it should be about, and then they'd say, "Okay, go ahead, write the script." So, but I do have fans, and when I go to the He-Man convention, I have some really big fans who liked it. The again, I mentioned a father and his 2 sons from Europe, from England. I think they came here not so much to see me, but when they found I was there, that they said that was their favorite script. So I had a lot of people that really liked that script. So I don't feel bad about it at all. The only thing I am a bit annoyed is they have not made any Crackers the Clown statuettes yet. So I said, come on, guys. I know you may hate the show, some of them. I said, give me a Crackers the Clown, those little things they toy. So,
An
oh,
action figure, an
what?
action figure of him, an action
Yeah, an
figure of
action
Crackers the
figure.
Clown.
And they just laugh at me. But I would stand up in these, rooms where they're talking about all their favorite stuff. Well, how about crackers? You know. So, it's. Um, I like it as it turned out. Even the storyboard people, they had a great director. She did a good job, and I had. I like it. I'm happy I wrote the one that was really different.
Cool. And now it's time for my
James
last
James
question.
Eatock was James Eatock was the person has written. You probably have heard of him. Who's written a lot of He-Man books, and he's coming out
Ah,
with all kinds of exciting things. And he
the
was the one
name
that
is
said,
familiar. Looks like
"Yeah, well,
familiar. The name sounds
if you,
familiar.
yeah, he was the one that said this is the worst episode ever." But he says, "I had to admit, I thought it was funny." So he thought it was funny, but of course they didn't think He-Man or Skeletor should be so funny, I guess. But we get along just fine. When we were at the He-Man convention, the last one I was at, I said, let's pose for a picture. So he has a huge book. He writes all these big books with the very detailed everything about He-Man and the other things he works on. And so we pose. He's at my page with my episode, the uh, Greatest Show on Eternity, and he's holding his noses, and I'm crying, like he's hates my script still. But we're great friends, and
Cool.
he's doing some great projects too that are pretty exciting. We'll see what happens. Keep your eye on him.
Yes, I take a look.
I think he's
And now
starting a
it's time.
YouTube channel
Ah,
with something going on there related
cool.
to his love of He-Man.
Could be interesting. Maybe have a guest this guy in my show one day, or
Who
maybe put
knows?
you and him together in the show. Could be
Oh, that would
interesting.
be great. In one of his versions of he did a He-Man mini thing. I don't know what I forgot what he called it, but he did have a mention of crackers in it as a sort of an apology to me. So he he's still, but definitely check him out if you don't know him. Anybody that's watching, he is doing some pretty exciting things in the world of He-Man. He's certainly the expert. He knows everything about He-Man.
Cool.
Most of the fans know more about what I've written than I do. They know my career truly better than I do.
And
It was so long ago.
that's typical for every artist because the fan knows better than you what you did. Also, to me as a writer, when I meet someone that read my novel, remember each character they did, but I don't remember each character of each my
Yeah,
novel.
it's
So
hard
this
to
is
remember these things, especially when you were
or
just
for
writing
example,
one.
I'm also a singer. I did many songs also as a musician.
Yes,
And sometimes some fans comes out and told me some phrase of my song, and
yes,
I need maybe some minutes to remember in which song I says that, no,
yes,
because it's not easy to
yes.
remember everything you did.
Yeah, we go through a lot when you do. Creativity is such a dreaming kind of a state, and I don't know what the reason is, but they really know. They know when I was born. They know how old I am. They know everything about me, and so it's kind of funny that I don't. In fact, before I got on this presentation, I printed things out what I wrote. What did I write? Oh, it was Shadow of Skeletor. So while I may have written, many people think one of the worst episodes of He-Man, Shadow of Skeletor is very highly rated. Yeah, Shadow of Skeletor. A lot of people really like that episode and put it in one of the top 10. I think James Eatock, maybe not in his top 10, but he told me, I really like that one. So that's a popular episode that I did write. Maybe and it wasn't the last one. That was my second one. So I must have learned something about these characters by the third week working at Filmation.
Cool.
It was a
Maybe I
wonderful place to work at, by the way. We were really a family there, and although we had to work very hard, it was sad when the company shut down.
Yes,
when they
was
were bought
because
out.
I did some interview with other guys that work in with filmation, like Rob Lamb or Tom Cook,
Yes,
and everybody told me that there was the situation on filmation was really beautiful
it
working
really
this
was.
family.
Much as I may have complained, I had to write a script every 2 weeks, and the voice actors were getting residuals, and the writers weren't. That was just the way things were set up. But we all really missed it. I remember years later, a couple of times we had reunions, and it was really nice to see everybody again. All those wonderful, talented people that we were all working like crazy, trying to get stuff done. Everybody had a lot of work to do. There was one guy, all he did was, rearrange the cells, make sure they were in good shape so we could use them again. He had all these big shelves just for all these different movements. The storyboard artists had books of standard movements that were used over and over again, and they would have us go up there beginning of the season or whatever, and try to use these again if you possibly can. In the case of The Greatest Show on Eternia, there was so much new stuff. It was probably one of the more expensive shows to do. There was a circus tent, other things were going on. There were no already pre-animated skeletons jumping out of a cannon. So it was a lot of new stuff. It was an expensive show to shoot. Um, so it was really a wonderful place to be, and I've had those experiences on other shows, but nothing quite like Filmation. We still stay in touch, those of us who are still around.
And today, many show Filmation still my favorite. Speaking of cartoon, Iman, Shira, Filmation
Yes,
Ghostbusters, Brave Star 2. I like this
yes,
show. I like the storyline, the characters, because also the background character had a personality in that show,
yes. They
and
knew
that's
that
super
much,
cool.
even
Yes,
though it was tight budgets and everything else. Somebody there made sure it stayed correct. They had some people with lots of years of experience running that place, and so we were fortunately it wasn't just characters. Once again, were important to keeping that place going, because the things you mentioned are things about having good characters, people you like on it, or even if you hate them, they're fun to hate, or whatever it might be. They knew that secret. So, of course, Lou Scheimer was in charge of that whole thing,
he's a
and he was
legend himself, Lushaimer.
yeah, he was an amazing guy, and his daughter is still around, keeping an eye on it the best she can. But of course, all the Filmation properties are owned by other people now. They've been,
That's right.
sold and probably resold and resold. So they're just living off the good stuff that our team did, and we had some amazing people there. Any
So
other questions?
I have my final question for the show. So the final question of the
Yes.
show is this one: is about the creativity in general and the art in general, the writing in general, because I think that when when your talent take over your life, you
Yes.
can live without that because
Yeah.
the become your job, and sometimes the art take over your life. You need to work 12 hours of day to
Yes.
do your stuff. So now that you do also another type of job, do you still writing something? You can stay without writing now?
Well, I am actually. I told. I thought I was finished with writing, and I just happened to think about something, and I told a friend of mine, a person who used to be a writer on Saturday Night Live, and I said, "Here's something you may want to think about." He said, "Well, why don't you think about it?" So I have an idea that I'm working on. Very funny, you know. Whether it'll sell, I don't know, but I wake up now at night with another idea and I write it down.
Cool.
So who knows what may happen coming out of here? You've heard it here first. I do have an idea for something, and we'll see what becomes of it. So I am. But even when I'm doing the websites, the Shopify sites, I I'm giving people ideas of funny things I'd like them to put onto their site. I had a client just a few days ago. I said, "Do you really want to sell your products?" And I told them what they should do. And it was a funny thing. Now, they didn't expect to hear that from me. They expected all this technical jargon, but they did want to know how they could get more business. I said, well, here's what you could do if you really want to do it. So they're taking that. They like the idea. We'll see how far that goes. But besides all that, I am working on a project which, who knows, if I can get it sold.
Finger crossed for this
Yeah,
project.
part of it is the team getting a celebrity to like it, and so that helps sell the project. We'll see what happens, but I've been working on it and waking up every night with another note, and
Cool.
some
This
very
is
funny
cool.
stuff.
I love
We'll
it.
see.
So let's see. We'll see if we become a reality.
Yeah,
You
we'll
you
see.
will come back, or you give me the exclusive
I
to talk
guess the
about.
thing is, if anybody is there who wants to write or be an artist or have, whether it's creative or not, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Do it your way, and because people thought I was wasting my time writing these jokes that I finally got on laughing. I mean, it was such a impossibility that I would ever get on that show. So you got to go with what you do, and don't worry about the haters, the bullies. Some of your very best friends and your family could be your worst enemies. So you got to really think about what you want to do. Not that my family was against what I was doing. They were horrified that I wanted to get into show business. They wanted me to be a
I
doctor or
understand really well what you say now, because when I start my career as a musician in Italy, I become a little bit popular. But in the beginning, the first enemies in this way was my parents, because they didn't want to
yes,
see me on TV or on the stage to do song in this music business. So
yeah,
I was really uh, was difficult, because frustrate also fight alone for your idea. But
that's
because of
right.
my determination, I was able to be a special guest for many seasons of showing TV in Italy. I was the opener for concert for important musicians. I had a career in the past as a musician in Italy, because I believe in myself. I do the
Yeah.
same time as a writer. Yes, today I publish, for example, I'm writing on my novel number 38, but I
Wow.
publish only five of them,
Uh-huh.
because it's not easy to find the good publisher that understand your style and your idea. Now I find maybe a publisher. Let's see what happens. But I will continue to write because I need writing.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
I must. And in my case, I'm finding that old excitement because number one, it's my own idea. I'm not writing for He-Man or Fat Albert it's my own idea, and I really like it. So I know it'll be funny. Whether it ever becomes filmed is another story. But I have this really funny concept, and I've been working on it. So we'll see. But
I hope there will be this project will get the opportunity that it deserves, because I think is I think an art is still fresh like in the beginning, because an art is a different person. It's still
yes,
there still a child inside of us as
yes,
artists. And so because of
yeah,
that, your idea is still fresh. And no matter if you are 40, 50, or 60, or 70, or 15 years old, because you're
right.
still fresh inside, I think.
Yeah, and young people, I'm concerned about that because you go on the internet now and they're just bullied, and or they're doing copycats of other people that trying to do it their way. They want to be another, whatever, on the internet. They want to be an influencer, or worse, they get shut down by bullies. A lot of bullying on the internet, and it's tough enough to get it in school when I was a kid, although nobody bullied me really. But kids today are creative kids. You can imagine how they're shot down all the time for their ideas. Are you frozen? No, you're not frozen. You're
No, no,
just
no, I'm still
listening.
here.
Okay.
Yes, because in
I get
Italy the
worried now and then.
connection is so. In Italy we have a really slow and bad connection internet. So
I
sometimes
see.
we are
I
in the
see.
nights, because right now is 4 a.m. where I
Oh,
live.
I
But
see.
also
What time is it in Italy?
imagine, yes, imagine do the show in the in the during the day. If it works like that in
Yes,
the night, the connection.
I just wouldn't do it. So, what
Yes.
time is it in Italy now?
4 a.m. and 14 minutes. But to me, it's normal
Oh,
because I live in the night, because I have two channels. This one, another is a channel of wrestling.
uh-huh.
They are based with US audience. So
I
because of
see.
that, I live in the night for the channels. Also as a writer, and also as a musician in the past, I'm a guy that writing in the night. I compose
Yeah,
music in the night. The night
yeah,
is like a white paper where you can put
yes,
everything with to follow the
yeah,
river of your creativity.
yeah, yeah. I like writing when no one's around. So I like night too, when possible.
Yes, to me,
So
it's possible because I basically do writing, do YouTube is my job also, no? And because of
yes,
that, I'm free to wake up at 4 p.m. in the
yeah,
day and go to sleep on 7 a.m. No, like that
yeah,
is my.
yeah. Well, when I was writing television, usually my hours were very late. Now that I'm not, I do wake up in the middle of the night. I have my notepad right next to me, and with this my new idea that I'm working on, we'll see what becomes of it.
You
So
need
that's about it. Is there any
you
other
need to
questions?
every a notebook, everything,
Yeah,
everywhere
yeah.
to don't lose
I
the
I
ideas.
have a little thing called Notepad. I have all my notes here. Let me see. Oh, I turned it off because I don't want it to interfere. But I have my notes. I have a script writing program I like, so Arc Studio Pro, and I'm using that to as I build up the script. I have too many ideas for the script. I got to cut them down. A lot of funny stuff.
Cool, super cool.
So, and I never
So
thought I'd
now,
write another script
so
until
okay, let's see what happened with that. And also,
yeah,
before to go to the piano, to the outro of the show, I, I hope to have you back in the future because you did a lot of stuff. Maybe
yes,
if I'm able to find the guy that you mentioned before, that working with the man, could be
yeah,
cool
yeah. We could do that. Yeah,
could be cool have you both to talk about Master Universe together. Should be interesting.
yeah, yeah. That would be good. All right, everybody.
So I go to the
I want
piano to
everybody to
the.
like and subscribe. Okay.
Yes, like and subscribe to the channel and follow Rowby Goren project and
Yeah.
everything around the world. Thanks for watching, my friends, and don't forget to follow everything that Rowby Goren did in your awesome career. Because guy like Rowby make some dreams come true. Because the art and the creativity is the better thing in the life. So, Roby, thank you, and thank you to all of you guys. Bye bye, guys. See you
Hi,
in
everybody.
2 weeks. There will be another episode in 2 weeks. So, stay tuned on this channel
Oh.
for more episodes of Mr. Alan Super Show. So long, everybody.